Hello, welcome to Season 7 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is the current state of horror. We'll be watching 20 or so movies from the last couple of years, reviewing them like normal, and then also talking about some of the larger trends we see. If you want to see the list and follow along, check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So I'm not going to lie, I've never been more excited for an episode.
Really?
Yeah. Because, so last week, we watched the movie Mother, and you hated it. Mm-hmm. And I believe that you said that you disliked it as much as you disliked Under the Skin, which is probably is a running joke for how much you hate that movie. Mm-hmm. But I also believe you said something along the lines of, I'm tired of having to try to understand someone's interpretation of an old story. Just give me a knife and a guy who can't die. Yeah. And I said that this week would be a lot better for you because we were watching the first Purge. Mm-hmm. But then we realized that was only available to buy, not rent, so we decided to skip it and come back later. Yeah. And instead we watched Ladyworld.
Yeah. And so then when when I messaged you last night to see if you wanted to do like the argument of why it's a good film or not, why I left it up to you, and why I figure you took it is because you know I would have too hard of a time to come up with good things for this movie. Well, and then to make it even better, you've been up since what, like 5 a.m. today? Yeah, 5 a.m.
Yeah, so that's
been
great.
Up for 5 hours, 10 a.m. right now.
Yeah. So I personally, I cannot wait. This is like Christmas to me. So
yeah, I think it'll be. Yeah, I was. I'll probably take like one of these days. We should just like on maybe like our website, thehorrific.com. We should just like have me post pictures of my notes, and like if you can make out the handwriting, it's just like it's generally like what in the hell. Like, it's questions I have to myself to make sure I understand what's going on too. Like, but yeah, and as it goes on, if I get more frustrated with the film, you can tell because my handwriting goes from being pretty sloppy already to like just scribbles, like
just anger manifested in ink.
Yeah. So it's a doozy. This one's gonna be a little doozy.
All right, buckle up, everybody. We're getting started. In 2018, Ladyworld premiered at Fantastic Fest in good old Austin, Texas. This film was written and directed by Amanda Kramer and is an all-female take on the famous novel Lord of the Flies. It tells the story of 8 girls who get trapped in a house after an earthquake. Things get real dark real fast. This movie was distributed by Cleopatra Entertainment. I couldn't find any information about the budget or how much it made at the box office, but it can be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video and has surprisingly good reviews on most sites.
Oh, I thought my mic was muted.
It's fine.
I'm just kidding.
I had a horrible time finding more information about this movie. Like, because generally I'll try and just kind of read and get a feel for, either what people said about it or, what the director was thinking when it was being made or whatever. Could not find much press at all on this one. Were you able to find any of your fun facts?
No, I was not about this movie specifically, but I was able to find... So what I thought was I'd give you a fun fact about the book, The Lord of the Flies, which is what this movie's kind of based off of. I'll just do one fact. There's a ton, obviously, because it's an older book. But so the book initially was a flop, which I thought was kind of funny because it's like mandatory reading. I think now. I mean, I had to read it in school.
Was it too controversial at the time?
The trouble that they ran in initially was that The author, I think this was like the author's first book that they wrote, I think was one of the things I was reading. So no one wanted to publish it initially. It was Golding's first book, Lord of the Flies. Was met with little interest from multitudes of publishing companies to whom he sent his manuscript. This is a quote from his daughter, but saying that my earliest memory is not of the book itself, but a lot of parcels coming back and being sent off again very quickly. Because they didn't have much money. But the fact I thought was kind of funny was that it said, or not funny, but good, was the book was a commercial flop. Upon its release in 1954, Lord of the Flies Upon its release in September 1954, Lord of the Flies underwhelmed at bookstores, selling only 4,662 copies through the following year, falling out of print shortly thereafter. Critical acclaim and the respect of the academic community steadily grew over the rest of the decade, and the novel eventually found enough audience that by 1962 it had sold 65,000 copies. So 8 years later, it sold 65,000 copies.
Wow.
It also did have like the censorship issues because censors, but
yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was it was also, I think this is also like one of Stephen King's one of his favorite books of all time.
I would believe that, definitely. Yeah. And I could see some influences too, especially with like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting too. I wonder if the censorship actually helped it, like if it became controversial and that made people more interested in seeing it. But another thing I think is interesting is that I wonder if this movie will have the same career arc.
I think it just busted a brain. I think I got hemorrhage. No. No. You know, like when you, when something just chills you, like your spine?
Yeah.
You see something, maybe like if you're scared of heights and you go up really high or something, you just get that. That's what I just got. Oh, man.
Yeah. So we decided that for movies where we both kind of generally felt the same way, that we were going to add a new segment called This Movie Rocks, This Movie Sucks. And so one of us will be assigned the role of This Movie Rocks, and the other of us will be assigned the role of This Movie Sucks. And then we have kind of like an open debate format where we have to argue each side. And because you had to watch 2 movies in a row that I know you personally hated with a fiery passion, I decided I would be a gentleman and take the This Movie Rocks position this week.
And we should also note that, like, if it's like a movie that, so basically the way this goes is if it's a movie that I'm going to have a lot of questions about to Daniel, then we're not going to do the love or hate. So like Hereditary, we didn't do it but like the ones that we know that we could have fun with, like we're going to do it with the first Purge and like this movie and like Child's Play and stuff like that we know that just so we can have a little bit extra fun.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be every episode.
Right. Yeah. It's only when we feel that it will enhance the discussion. So
yeah.
So we're going to start off with opening arguments. And would you like me to go first, or would you like to go first?
I'll let you go first.
All right. I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes, and I am going to tell you why this movie rocks.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Yeah, I'm going to mute my mic. Just thought I'd tell you.
Okay. It is currently 2020. We are in the throes of the coronavirus pandemic. Most of the country, nay, most of the world is on lockdown right now. I think all of us are feeling that sort of sense of being confined and not being able to be out and free and participating in the world as we normally would. And I personally am lucky because I am quarantined with my wife and my dog, both of whom I really like. But if you start thinking about people in other situations, maybe someone who recently got a new roommate and doesn't know them super well, there's a lot of people that aren't super happy with the way that they're being confined currently. And I feel like there could not be a more perfect movie to watch during this time than 2018's Ladyworld. Ladyworld is telling the story of 8 teenage girls who are attending a birthday party, and then a massive earthquake happens. There's a landslide, and they are all stuck inside this house. It is not concerned so much with communicating some sort of like cohesive storyline as it is with creating that feeling of tension and anxiety and the building confrontation between the people and the way that the stress of the situation and the dwindling supplies feeds into that. And so it's sort of like a psychological profile of the different ways that people react to a stressful situation like that. But then it's also made to be just as uncomfortable as possible. Everything from the music to the camera angles to the way that it's written with the different developments of the story and the interactions between people and just sort of the general confusion that comes along with it. It's basically an impressionist painting of an anxiety attack. And that is why this movie rocks in 2020.
You son of a bitch. You're so good, man. I kind of want to watch it again now.
You have no idea how long it took to come up with that. But anyway, so you are now on the spot to tell us in 2 minutes or less why this movie sucks. And I'm going to start the timer, and I'll give you a 30-second warning.
Okay.
Ready?
I'll start a timer same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. This movie sucks because it is not a real representation of what would happen in an event like the coronavirus. I can tell you why. Because I'm in the coronavirus with a house full of people I hate, my wife and dogs, and that's not happening. Not really. So this movie sucks because within 30 seconds, you were immediately confused on what was going on. How did they not know each other if they were at a party at this house? Why is there no food in this house? You can see out the damn window. Why don't you break it? Get out. Takes 2 seconds. I break windows all the time. It'd be great. It also is a bad representation of what really happens at girls' sleepovers. It seemed like within 8 hours, these girls were at each other's throats. That's not the case. It usually takes 24 hours. I've timed it. I have a younger sister. I think it's an insult to the book. It didn't want to tell you what time it was, and I think what really happened with this movie is they decided, hey, we're going to put this movie together. Oh, it turned out bad. Let's just call it artsy. We'll get away with it. Oh, it's just art. That's why you don't understand it. No, we don't understand it because it makes no goddamn sense. That's what's wrong with this society. I got 20 more seconds. I'm just saying, just to let us know what's going on. There's nothing in this telling you what's going on. Someone opens the door at the end. What the? I'm ending 5 seconds early. I think I kind of sounded like my crazy uncle for a minute. I really came unglued. But you know what's funny is I actually have in my notes about initially how I felt like this was ruining what I always thought happened at girl sleepover parties. Mm-hmm. And I just turned that into why I hated the movie.
Well, all right then. I think we've both declared our position, so now it's time to battle it out.
Okay. Yeah.
I do agree with you about the beginning being very confusing. There was basically no setup. You were just sort of thrust into the situation where two of the girls were talking about their inability to get out.
Right.
And they seem very like unfamiliar with each other, and it's like an extended dialogue. And then all of a sudden it cuts to, oh, there are 6 more people in the house too. Because in the beginning you definitely thought it was just like 2 girls stuck in the house. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden there were all these more people. But I think that was kind of a tactic of the movie, in that it didn't really hold your hand. It didn't give you a lot of detail. It just sort of jumped around. It was very unbalanced, and I think that was part of what it was like trying to do.
Yeah, I think that... So here's my thing on what I would have done to fix the movie. First off, burn the script. Not really. What I would have done, because the way that they set it up was, with the first girl waking up and then coming across the other weirdo, that Dolly. I shouldn't be so mean about these. But what I thought was going to happen, I actually wrote down at the top of my notes, I wonder if, and as like the people were like coming and kind of being introduced, I wrote, I wonder if this is like all in her head, like she's just kind of gone crazy, like by herself in this house, and she's imagining all this stuff kind of go down, and because just how she was being introduced and all that, and like I think that would have been a better situation, like better movie, if you found out she was just crazy at the end or something. Could have been the door open and they just sat there like freaking idiots staring at it. But I definitely, we've gone on this hand holding thing before, like where like it's nice to know what's going on a little bit, and it's nice to not have your hand held the whole time as well. But in a situation, if you're not going to really explain what's going on in the film, I feel like you have to have pretty good dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that this for sure was lacking. And also the fact that you didn't know really what time of day it was, it hurt it, because it was like, wait, are these girls going crazy after only being together for 45 minutes?
Yeah. And
it's like, what's changed? Like they were legit going crazy, and it seemed like that could have been a day or two, Yeah. And it's like, I feel like realistically they wouldn't be taking a piss in a washer.
Mm-hmm. Well, so
one day.
Yeah, there's a lot there. One thing is, you mentioned the dialogue would need to be better. So I felt like one thing that was a little rough on this movie was that the acting was very unbalanced. Like, I thought the acting was really good for some and really bad for others. And Dolly, for example, I felt was just like screaming unintelligibly in every scene. Like, I could barely make out what she was saying most of the time. And she was always like 0 to 60 on the emotional scale. Yeah. But yeah, which made it hard to kind of follow what was actually meant to be going on. But in general, like, the one thing that I think the movie was going for was how the stress of the situation was impacting people differently. And so, she was the character who was just immediately breaking down. Mm-hmm. And you had others that were sort of immediately like, oh, well, I'm the bad guy. The rules are gone, so I don't feel any obligation to try and be nice to people. And then you had those that were a little bit more in the middle, that either went one way or the other as the movie went on. And so I thought that was interesting. I thought that was one thing that it did well, was sort of the different profiles or the different personality types around it. And I don't think that this movie was meant to give you a solid story. And we're talking, the theme of the season is the current state of horror. And I think that's kind of a big thing right now. I think that the whole keep you unbalanced, don't give you anything solid to hold on to, just sort of create this unbalanced, scary, anxious environment is like a theme and a thing that's happening. And I feel like this movie was very much like in that style.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I think if you're going to do that, then at least come up with okay, never mind.
But I feel like that's not effective for you. I feel like that's not a thing that you connect with.
Well, it kind of depends. So in this situation, it makes sense that they are saying it's a Lord of the Flies situation, so they had to explain less in the film, I guess. So, like, in it, so you know, like, okay, well, if you know Lord of the Flies, which not everyone does, but I think it's like a mandatory reading thing. And the reason why I say that is because I read it in high school, and I wouldn't have read something if I didn't have to. But especially back then. But so I definitely understand that. But I guess it's like, how are you supposed to connect with fewer? I don't know. It just seems like a really big gamble to take, and that, like we kind of talked about with movies they're easier to make now because of the digital world. So it's like are we just gonna throw this, like, what are we just gonna throw this together and run off of that this is just a Lord of the Flies situation, and this is what this is what happened to these people? But if I'm thinking realistically, and I had, like, you, me, even Russell in this situation, he'd be first to go because he's weak. But we would, I mean, it's not like a logical...
You didn't find it relatable.
There's nothing logical in this situation. Like, only one person was like, we gotta get out of here. Mm-hmm. The others were just like, oh, we're in a house, there's an earthquake, who knows how long it's gonna be until we got here. And then it was also like, how do you all not know each other? Like, how are you at the same part? Was it a party that was going on?
Yeah, it was Eden's birthday party.
And Eden was gone.
Well, Eden disappeared, which was a thing they never really came back to.
Was she in it at the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, because I wrote Eden is gone, ? So I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah.
And then there was a man. Oh, well, we won't get into that yet.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this for sure is just not my style. Like I've said probably 8 times on that list last season.
Yeah.
But it's because it's not this is not scary to me, I guess, because I'm just more realistic, or like I have my the way I think is just a little bit different as far as, like, if you're stuck, then try to get out of it. Don't.
Yeah, whereas this movie, I think, the idea was just exploring the idea that you're stuck, not explaining why you are.
Yeah.
And
that's where that's what gets me. But that's a really good explanation of it.
And I had the same thought, because you could definitely see, like, daylight out the windows, and I'm like, bro, grab a chair. Like, you can break that window and get out in this real quick. But that's not what the movie was about. It wasn't about solving the problem. It was, so...
Yeah, I think that's where... So, I think the reason why Lord of the Flies works, wasn't it like a plane crash or something like that, where they were on an island? Isn't that how, or a boat?
Yeah, it's been too long, but something like that. Yeah, they were stuck on an island was the big thing, and then the military showed up at the end. Like
in a city with cell, where you have Facebook and whatever, Instagram, or whatever you want to go to. So that's why it was just like, it was a little strange for me.
Yeah.
It and then the characters kind of drove me crazy, but what drove me crazy even worse was the soundtrack to it.
So I was going to say, I was going to wait till the end to bring this up, but the one thing that I cannot defend about this movie, I cannot in any way say that this movie rocks. Yeah. The soundtrack, oh my God. Yeah. So some of there was like almost like the sound effect that just sounded so fake. Like, it sounded lifted from like a $20 keyboard, like a built-in sound effect, and they use that way too much. And then the whole, like, yelping dog sound that was mixed super loud through a lot of the movie.
The whole movie.
Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, like, it crossed the point from making me uncomfortable to making me annoyed. And that's always, like, a difficult thing, I think, with like, the more, like, ambient, sort of textural, like, moody type movie. Mm-hmm. But, wow. Like, I really... Had we not been doing this for the podcast, I would have turned it off.
Yeah. Like, at the end of the movie, when it's playing music in the credits, like, we kept it going because I wanted to see if, like, there was, like, an end credit scene.
Yeah.
And I had to mute it because it was just like the same terrible sounds going over and over, and I was like, this is intense. Like it didn't make sense to me, and I know the reason. I figure the reason is because it's trying to keep people disoriented, which is something that happens in horror movies a lot.
Yeah.
Specifically The Shining and stuff like that, where they don't want you to know exactly what's going on. But this one, like, everything was a little too disorienting. 1 second you had Dolly screaming, and then the next second you had a girl putting flower petals on her armpits, and it was just like, what's and then it's like, how long have you been here?
Yeah. Well, do you remember the part where the girl broke her ankle?
Yeah.
Yeah, the writers didn't.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, with that, I feel like there were some parts of the script where it was just trying to be. It was like almost a bunch of little sketches that were showing like how the different people were reacting in the situation.
Yeah.
And so there were some things like the broken ankle that went away, and then I was pretty sure there was a scene where the doll's head got ripped off.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't off later. And okay, like I get it, whatever. It's just more like inconsistency, and that just kind of makes you feel like you don't know what's going on and you're confused, and it doesn't really impact like the overall flow. But there was also some stuff where I felt like I feel like it was trying to make some points or to be like allegorical about some things, and one was like sort of like the embrace of sexuality versus the no, we're still just kids regarding like the man. Like I think he was supposed to symbolize something.
Oh,
but I didn't.
Okay.
But I didn't feel like it was ever like developed in a way that was meaningful.
Right.
So then it just was kind of like lost. So then what was the point of it? Because I don't know. I felt like in some cases the sort of vagueness worked, but in some cases it didn't. And so you were just left with a bunch of questions that didn't really get answered.
Right. But it wasn't like the good questions that didn't get... Like sometimes it's like it leaves the door open and you're like, oh, those bastards need to watch more of one another.
Yeah.
But, this one was... It was definitely a miss for me.
Yeah.
Did Dolly end up missing at the end?
It wasn't clear what happened to her.
Okay.
So she was like in the hallway when Olivia hid in the closet, and then you never see her again after that. So it may have been that they just put her, like, locked her in that other closet with the other girl or something. But I don't know.
Okay. And then the man was downstairs and like dead.
Yeah.
Or when
they were leaving.
Yeah. And also, like, what was the main girl's name? Olivia?
Yeah.
She mentioned, like, her stepdad, like, 3,000 times.
Yeah. But he was a volunteer fireman.
Right. And I was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Huh.
I didn't really go anywhere. But
in my notes, I have, it just says redhead is, and I don't know what I was going to go with that. I think I was talking about Piper.
Yeah.
I assume annoying would have been after that, maybe?
Yeah. Well, so I think there were a couple of things that I liked that I can point out that you might agree with. One was the camera work. I really liked all those scenes where they somehow managed to fit all 8 of them in the same, like, tight shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was good because it just made you feel like the same claustrophobia of, like, being trapped in a house with 8 people. Mm-hmm. And doing that, like, visually, I thought was good. The setup was good. And I also thought the costuming was good. As Piper and her gang, started putting on the makeup and just became super, super creepy. And one thing, too, is I don't know if you've read much about Fantastic Fest, but that's been going on in Austin for a long time, and it takes place at the South Lamar Alamo Drafthouse. And I mostly know about it because that's the one that we go to the most often, but it gets closed for a while for Fantastic Fest. And in learning more about it, it kind of has a reputation for showing movies that are meant to be, like, very shocking. And so I think in that context, this would actually be kind of a good fit. Because if you were in a theater and you're watching that scene towards the end where Olivia is trying to crawl out and that like weird high-pitched dog moan sound effect is going on in like theater volume, and you see the other girls with their like smeared makeup like crawling towards her in the basement, like that was a crazy moment that would have been super intense and like grabbing in that theater setting during that festival. Like if you were thinking through the different movies that are shown and which ones are going to generate the most talk or the most hype afterwards, I feel like that was what it was going for. And so I don't think it was going for people are going to go out of the theater and really talk through all the intelligent points that the story made. It was more like people are going to walk out of the movie being like, what just happened to me? And I think that's what it was going for.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think you're saying it's an artsy-fartsy film, but it just leans more towards the fartsy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so, actually.
It's all you dumb people like me. That's what Daniel said.
But yeah,
I think the shots were really good. I think I could definitely see that, and I don't know if this had like a big worldwide release or if it was or limited or what. It was just I just wish that there would have been some way that some things could be explained a little bit more. There could have been a lot less repetitive dialogue.
Yeah.
I felt like the whole dialogue was just like almost like a chorus in a song, where it was just like constantly the same thing. And then like the chanting was kind of insane. And then also because I'm alpha dog, I would have ran that house myself. Things would have been a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it just it was just kind of a miss for old Tom.
Well, I think this movie rocks.
Daniel.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. My favorite part of this movie was how the one girl smoked one joint while looking at a painting by candlelight, and she's immediately just like, everything's ugly unless you can see beauty in the ugly. 100% tracks with every party I went to in college.
Explains that statement that she said is exactly something that the writer of this movie said at one time in their life. I'm just saying. That's a guess. They probably smoked a joint and they thought they were artsy.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say that the only way you could enjoy or see beauty in this movie is if you could see beauty in bad movies.
Yeah. Yeah.